blar blue blar blee blar blee blar blee blar blah blee blar blar blee blar blah. I'm just kidding. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to LTL Podcast. We're gonna have a fun episode. It's gonna be nice to get away from true crime for a little bit tonight, but I thought this would be interesting. I want to welcome everybody back. It's episode 46, and it is July 31st, 2023. Can you believe that July is over? This year is flying by. But I thought we would do something, a little bit different on the podcast tonight. And I've been meaning to watch this congressional hearing. I heard it was kind of mind-blowing, all of the details that I heard about it. I'm not going to waste too much time because we do have about an hour and a half to get through this evening. And what I did was I kind of fast forwarded about 20 minutes into the congressional hearing so we can get to the actual whistleblowers that were on panel that evening, or that day. I'm sorry. I always say evening because I'm so used to doing my show at evening. But what I'm going to do here is bring up this article really quick just to kind of refresh us as to what went on. So the AP was reporting, whistleblower tells Congress the U.S. is concealing multi-decade program that captures UFOs. I'm going to read a little bit of this just to get us kind of caught up, and then we're going to get right into the congressional hearing. So Washington AP, the U.S. is concealing a longstanding program that retrieves and reverse engineers unidentified flying objects. A former Air Force intelligence officer testified Wednesday to Congress. The Pentagon has denied his claims. Of course they have. Retired Major David Grusch, highly anticipated testimony before a House Oversight Subcommittee was Congress's latest foray into the world of UAPs, an unidentified aerial phenomenon, which is the official term the U.S. government uses instead of UFOs. While the study of mysterious aircraft or objects often invokes talks of aliens and little green men, blee blah blue blah blue blee blarb, Democrats and Republicans in recent years have pushed for more research as a national security matter due to concerns that sightings observed by pilots may be tied to U.S. adversaries. Grusch said that he asked in 2019 the head of the government task force on UAPs to identify a highly classified program relating to task force missions. At the time, Grusch was detailed to the National Reconnaissance Office, that the agency that operates U.S. spy satellites. All right, that gives us a little bit of a background as to what we're going to get into here. And I'm going to pull up that congressional hearing, and we will start this pretty soon. I just want to go back up because I think I did see a super chat before we started. So we actually want to recognize this. Jackie Sue M has become a new member. And I did see a super chat that I want to star up too. So let's do this. Ali Reza, my buddy, popped by. I said, hey, I'll be on Team Replay, but I wanted to drop by again, seeing you last night. Have a good show, man. And he always gives me these. He's so great with his super chats. He hands out the oddest numbers of super chats, and I think it's so unique and awesome. So, Ali, thank you so much. It was great going over to hang out on JJ's. I think it's Gentleman's Hangout or JJ's Hangout. Watch Hangout. I forget what he changed his name to now, but it was really nice to see you guys over there and hang out on the panel for a little bit. It was a really good time, and it was nice to catch up with old people. So thank you. Homie. All right. Let's pull up this congressional hearing. Let's get through the. Let's see. I'll be curious to see. I got a poll at the top. I want to know: do you believe in extraterrestrial beings or life? All right, let's play this.
For your opening statement.
Thank you. Chairman Grothman, Ranking Member Garcia, distinguished members of the House Oversight Subcommittee on National Security, Representatives Burchett and Luna. My name is Ryan Fobbs Graves, and I'm a former F-18 pilot with a decade of service in the U.S. Navy, including 2 deployments in Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Inherent Resolve. I have experienced advanced UAP firsthand, and I'm here to voice the concerns of more than 30 commercial aircrew and military veterans who have confided their similar encounters with me. Today, I would like to highlight 3 critical issues that demand our action. As we convene here, UAP are in our airspace, but they are grossly underreported. These sightings are not rare or isolated, they are routine. Military aircrew and commercial pilots, trained observers whose lives depend on accurate identification, are frequently witnessing these phenomena. The stigma attached to UAP is real and powerful and challenges national security. It silences commercial pilots who fear professional repercussions, discourages witnesses. It is only compounded by recent government claims questioning the credibility of eyewitness testimony. Parts of our government are aware of more about UAP than they let on, but excessive classification practices keep crucial information hidden. Since 2021, all UAP videos are classified as secret or above. This level of secrecy not only impedes our understanding, but fuels speculation and mistrust. In 2014, I was an F-18 Foxtrot pilot in the Navy Fighter Attack Squadron 11, the Red Rippers. And I was stationed at NAS Oceana in Virginia Beach. After upgrades were made to our jet's radar systems, we began detecting unknown objects operating in our airspace. At first, we assumed they were radar errors, but soon we began to correlate the radar tracks with multiple onboard sensors, including infrared systems, eventually through visual ID. During a training mission in Warning Area Whiskey 72, 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, two F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP. The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft and was estimated to be 5 to 15 feet in diameter. The mission commander terminated the flight immediately and returned to base. Our squadron submitted a safety report, but there was no official acknowledgement of the incident and no further mechanism to report the sightings. Soon, these encounters became so frequent that aircrew would discuss the risk of UAP as part of their regular pre-flight briefs. Recognizing the need for action and answers, I founded Americans for Safe Aerospace. The organization has since become a haven for UAP witnesses who were previously unspoken due to the absence of a safe intake process. More than 30 witnesses have come forward and almost 5,000 Americans have joined us in the fight for transparency at safeaerospace.org. The majority of witnesses are commercial pilots at major airlines. Often, they are veterans with decades of flying experience. Pilots are reporting UAP at altitudes that appear above them at 40,000 feet, potentially in low Earth orbit or in the gray zone below the Kármán line, making inexplainable maneuvers like right-hand turns and retrograde orbits or J-hooks. Sometimes these reports are reoccurring, with numerous recent sightings north of Hawaii and in the North Atlantic. Other veterans are also coming forward to us regarding UAP encounters in our airspace and oceans. The most compelling involve observations of UAP by multiple witnesses and sensor systems. I believe these accounts are only scratching the surface, and more will share their experiences once it is safe to do so. In closing, I recognize the skepticism surrounding this topic. If everyone could see the sensor and video data I witnessed, our national conversation would change. I urge us to put aside stigma and address the security and safety issue this topic represents. If UAP are foreign drones, it is an urgent national security problem. If it is something else, it is an issue for science. In either case, unidentified objects are concerned for flight safety. The American people deserve to know what is happening in our skies. It is long overdue. Thank you.
Mr. Grusch.
All right, let me Danger Will Robinson checking in, another OG on the channel here. He says there are a lot more of these disclosures. The hearings are for normalization in the public eye. Check out David, I think it's Paul Edes, Missing 411 series. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Appreciate that. Thanks for hanging out. All right. I didn't think we were going to get a large audience tonight. I think too many people are going to be interested in this, but I was interested in it, and I wanted to do something a little bit different. I just wanted to do something a little bit different. So we'll keep running through this. Maybe we can get 100 people in here tonight. That would be fun. But if not, we'll just keep moving on. All right.
Mr. Chairman, ranking members and congressmen, thank you. I'm happy to be here. This is an important issue, and I'm grateful for your time. My name is David Charles Grusch. I was an intelligence officer for 14 years, both in the U.S. Air Force, both active duty, Air National Guard, and Reserve, at the rank of major, and most recently from 2021 to 2023, at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA, at the GS-15 civilian level, which is the military equivalent of a full bird colonel. I was my agency's co-lead in unidentified anomalous phenomena and transmedium object analysis, as well as reporting to the UAP Task Force, UAPTF, and eventually, once it was established, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO. I became a whistleblower through a PPD 19 urgent concern filing in May 2022 with the Intelligence Community Inspector General. Following concerning reports from multiple esteemed and credentialed current and former military and intelligence community individuals that the U.S. government is operating with secrecy above congressional oversight with regards to UAPs. My testimony is based on information I've been given by individuals with a long-standing track record of legitimacy and service to this country, many of whom also have shared compelling evidence in the form of photography, official documentation, and classified oral testimony to myself and my various colleagues. I have taken every step I can to corroborate this evidence over a period of 4 years while I was with the UAP Task Force and do my due diligence on the individual sharing it. This is because of these steps, I believe strongly in the importance of bringing this information before you. I am driven by a commitment of both to truth and transparency, rooted in our inherent duty to uphold the United States Constitution and protect the American people. I'm asking Congress to hold our government to this standard and thoroughly investigate these claims. But as I stand here under oath now, I am speaking to the facts as I've been told them. In the U.S. Air Force, in my National Reconnaissance Office, NRO, reservist capacity, I was a member of the UAP Task Force from 2019 to 2021. I served at the NRO Operations Center on the Director's Briefing staff, which included the coordination of the Presidential Daily Brief and supporting a variety of contingency operations, which I was the Reserve Intelligence Division Chief backup. In 2019, the UAP Task Force Director asked me to identify all special access programs and controlled access programs, also known as SAPs and
What
CAPs.
the hell?
We needed to satisfy our congressional
All right, what is going on with my internet?
mandated mission, and we were direct
Experiencing interruptions. Oh my God, this could not even happen. It's the aliens.
the DepSecDef. At the time, due to my extensive executive level intelligence support duties, I was cleared to literally all relevant compartments
the hell,
and in a
man?
position of extreme trust, both in my military and civilian capacities. I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade
What the fuck? You gotta be kidding me.
UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, to which I was denied access to those additional read-ons.
Hell, man. What is going on? I'm going to try to find another stream with this on it. What the hell, man? Oh, come on. This cannot be happening. This is crazy. All right, hang on. Let me see if this is going to work. We're at 32 minutes. You've got to be kidding me. All right, let's try this again.
I made the decision based on the data I collected to report this information to my superiors and multiple inspectors general, and in effect becoming a whistleblower.
You've got to be kidding me, man. Yeah, full transparency. Oh, come on. Let's get back to this guy. Oh, is it my internet? It's my internet, I bet you. What's going on? All right, give me 2 seconds. Let me see what's going on here.
As you know, I've suffered retaliation for my decision.
I think we got it. Let's see.
but I am hopeful that my actions will ultimately lead
There we go.
to a positive outcome of increased transparency. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Commander Fravor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Congressman,
Ain't gonna work.
I want to first thank you for
This
the
is
invitation to
so
speak to the committee on the
weird.
UAP topic that's been in the news.
This has never happens. What the hell, man? Oh, come on. This is gonna ruin my show tonight. Ugh. Let me try this. What the fuck? It's my internet's being wacky. This is crazy. I have no internet right now. Hang on. I have zero internet. Oh, the hell, man. This is so weird. Ah. How can this be?
For the past 6 years and seems to be continuing to gain momentum. As you know, my name is David Fravor. I'm a retired commander in the United States Navy. In 2004, I was a commanding officer of Strike Fighter Squadron 41, the world famous Black Aces. We were attached to Carrier Wing 11, stationed on board the USS Nimitz, and had begun a 2-month workup cycle off the coast of California. On this day, we were scheduled for a 2v2 air-to-air training with the USS Princeton as our control. When we launched off Nimitz, my wingman was joining up. We were told that the training was going to be suspended and we're going to proceed with real-world tasking. As we proceeded to the west, the air controller was counting down the range to an object that we were going to, and we were unaware of what we were going to see when we arrived. The controller told us that these objects had been observed for over 2 weeks, coming down from over 80,000 feet,
Yeah, nano.
rapidly descending to 20,000 feet, hanging out for hours, and then going straight back up. For those who don't realize, above 80,000 feet is space. We arrived at the location at approximately 20,000
not
feet.
gonna
The
look
controller
outside.
called merge plot, which means that our radar blip was now in the same resolution cell as the contact.
What the hell, man?
As we looked around, we noticed that we saw some whitewater off our right side. It's important to note that the weather on this day was as close to perfect as you could ask for off the coast of San Diego. Clear skies, light winds, calm seas, no whitecaps from waves. So the whitewater stood out in a large blue ocean. All 4 of us, because we were in F-18Fs, so we had pilots and Wizzo in the back seat, looked down saw a white tic-tac object with a longitudinal axis pointing north-south and moving very abruptly over the water like a ping pong ball. There were no rotors, no rotor wash, or any sign of visible control surfaces like wings. As we started clockwise towards the object, my Wizzo and I decided to go down and take a closer look with the other aircraft staying in high cover to observe both us and the tic-tac. We proceeded around the circle about 90 degrees from the start of our descent, and the object suddenly shifted its longitudinal axis, aligned it with my aircraft, and began to climb. We continued down another 270 degrees, nose low, where the tic-tac, or we considered 270 degrees to where, and we went nose low to where the tic-tac would have been. Our altitude at this point was about 15,000 feet, and the tic-tac was about 12,000. As we pulled nose onto the object, within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerated in front of us and disappeared. The wingman, roughly 8,000 feet above us, lost contact also.
Now, I think I've seen this guy on Joe Rogan before. I've seen a lot of these guys on Joe Rogan, except for the first guy that spoke. And I know the guy sitting behind him in the green shirt has been on Joe Rogan before, too. They've talked about this stuff.
We immediately turned back to see where the whitewater was at, and it was gone also. So as we started to turn back towards the east, the controller came up and said, "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is at your cap point, roughly 60 miles away in less than a minute. You can calculate the speed." We returned to Nimitz. We were taking off our gear. We were talking to one of my crews that was getting ready to launch. We mentioned it to them, and they went out and luckily got the video that you see, that 90-second video. What you don't see is the radar tape that was never released, and we don't know where it's at, of the active jamming that the object put on an APG-73 radar, and I can get into modes later if you're interested. What is shocking to us is that the incident was never investigated. None of my crew were ever questioned. Tapes were never taken, and after a couple days, it turned into a great story with friends. It wasn't until 2009 until Jay Stratton had contacted me to investigate. Unbeknownst to all, he was part of the ATIP program in the Pentagon led by Lou Elizondo. And there was an official report that came out that's now on the internet. Years later, I was contacted by the other pilot, Alex Dietrich, and asked if I'd been contacted, and I said no, but I'm willing to talk. I was contacted by Mr. Elizondo, and we talked for a short period of time, and he said we'd be in contact. A few weeks after that, I was made aware that Lou had left the Pentagon in protest and joined forces with Tom DeLonge, Chris Mellon, Steve Justice, and others to form Two Stars Academy, an organization that pressed the issue with leading industry experts and U.S. government officials. They worked with Leslie Keene, who is present today, Ralph Blumenthal, and Helene Cooper to publish the articles in the New York Times 2017 New York Times. And it removed the stigma on the topic of UFOs, which is why we're here today. Those articles open the door for the government and public that cannot be closed. It has led to an interest from our elected officials who are not focused on little green men, but figuring out where these craft are, where are they from, the technology they possess, how do they operate. It also led to the Whistleblower Protection Act and the NDAA. There are multiple witnesses coming forward to say that have firsthand knowledge, and Mr. Grusch just covered that. What concerns me is that there's no oversight from our elected officials on anything associated with our government processing or working on craft. Believe it, not from this world. This issue is not a full public disclosure that could undermine national security, but it is about ensuring that our system of checks and balances works across all work done in the government using taxpayer funds. Relative to government programs, even unacknowledged WAVE programs have some level of oversight by the appropriate committee members in the House and Senate. And this work that is said to be occurring from whistleblower testimonies should not be exempt. In closing, I would like to say that the Tic Tac object we engaged in 2004 was far superior to anything that we had on time, have today, or are looking to develop in the next 10 years. If we in fact have programs that possess this technology, it needs to have oversight from those people that the citizens of this great country elected in office to represent what is best for the United States and best for the citizens. I thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I know it's very difficult for all of you, all you've done in the past to try to illuminate this issue. Call on myself first for some questions. I'm going to start with Mr. Graves. Are pilots that you interact with as part of your organization, do you feel adequately trained and briefed on how to handle encounters with UAPs?
No. Right now, military witnesses to UAP have limited options for reporting UAP. But more concerning is that commercial aviation sector has not adapted to the lessons that the military has implemented. The military and Department of Defense has stated that UAP represent a critical aviation safety risk. We have not seen that same language being used in the commercial markets. They are not acknowledging this risk.
Okay. What steps do you think you have to be taken to improve a pilot's UAP reporting, be it military or commercial?
Right now, we need a system where pilots can report without fear of losing their jobs. There is a fear that the stigma associated with this topic is going to lead to professional repercussions, either through management or perhaps through their yearly physical check. So having a secure system, reducing the stigma, and making this information available through the public is going to reduce the concerns that aircrew have.
Could you just give me a little idea of the degree to which reports in the past are not made public right now?
Well, I don't think there has been a proper reporting system to gather those reports and thus not report them. So to answer your question, I think there is a dearth of data due to the fact that the reporting has been limited up to this time.
Could you tell me why you believe it's, kind of to play the devil's advocate, a reason why some of this stuff should not be available to the public?
There's certainly some national security concerns when we use our advanced sensors in our tactical jets to be able to identify these objects. However, there's no reason that the objects themselves would be classified. I would be curious to see how the security classification guideline actually spells out the different nuances of how this topic is classified from the perspective of UAP, not national security.
I'll give you a follow-up on that. Assuming that there are reasons why not all this should be made public, this has been around for a long period of time. Can any of the three of you think of any reason why anything related to UAPs, say 15 years and back, should not be immediately made public?
I think one of it is acknowledging a vulnerability, both from a collection and I'll just say a countermeasure perspective. So it's that we haven't cracked for many years. Yeah.
Even say 20 years back. Is there any reason why, when you go back that far, things shouldn't be made public?
Unless it shows a specific national security vulnerability as it relates to a weakness in a particular defense system.
Oh, okay, Mr. Fravor, the TikTok incident that you were engaged occurred in 2004. What kind of reporting took place after that incident?
None. We had a standard debrief where the backseaters went down to our carrier intel center and briefed what had happened. And that was it. No one else talked to us. And I was in the top 20 in the battle group. No one came. The captain was aware, the admiral was aware, nothing was done.
Your commanding officers provide any sort of justification?
No, because I was the commanding officer of the squadron, so no.
Was this incident the only UAP event that you encountered while you were a pilot?
Yes, it was.
Okay. This is for any one of you. Based off of each of your experiences and observations, do you believe UAPs pose a potential threat to our national security?
Yes, and here's why. The technology that we faced was far superior than anything that we had, and you could put that anywhere. If you had one, you captured one, you reverse engineered it, you got it to work, you're talking something that can go into space, go someplace, drop down in a matter of seconds, do whatever it wants, and leave, and there's nothing we can do about it. Nothing.
Okay. You two?
Well, I would also like to add, from a commercial aviation and military aviation perspective, we deal with uncertainty in our operating space as a matter of our professional actions. Identifying friend from foe is very important to us. And so when we have unidentified targets and we continue to ignore those due to a stigma or a fear of what it could be, that's an opening that our adversaries can take advantage of.
What steps should be taken to better understand and respond to UAP encounters in the interest of national security?
There needs to be a location where this information is centralized for processing, and there needs to be a two-way communication loop so the operators on the front end have a feedback and can get best practices on how to process information, what to do, and to ensure that their reporting is being listened to. Right now, there is not a lot of back and forth.
Mr. Grusch, in your complaint to the intelligence community inspector general, you claim that you believe information is being hidden. What kind of information do you think was hidden, and do you think it should remain hidden?
Yes, I can speak to that very briefly in unclassified manner. As you know, the preponderance of my complaint was classified to the intelligence communities. Both material acquisition and exploitation activity, also baselining the UAPs, but not sharing it with, intelligence professionals that are actually doing step briefs to pilots, that kind of information. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now we'll go to Mr. Garcia.
Thank you. Again, thank you all for your service and for testifying today. Want to just talk about UAPs as it relates to what we're seeing in pilots' interaction with UAPs. Particularly, Mr. Graves, one of the concerns that for members of this committee is this idea that pilots, there's no system to actually report UAPs and the stigma around pilots. And so can you just briefly, you mentioned that you're working with 30 pilots right now that have had encounters with UAPs, but you've also, I believe, discussed and know of many more pilots. This is just those that you're currently working with. Is that correct? Can you expand on that?
Certainly. I'll break that down in two ways. First, when we were first experiencing these objects off the eastern seaboard in the 2014 to 2015 time period, anyone that had upgraded their radar systems were seeing these objects. So there was a large number of my colleagues that were detecting these objects off the eastern seaboard. They were further correlating that information with the other onboard sensors, and many of them also had their own eye sightings as well of these objects. Now, that was our personal firsthand experience at the time. Since then, as I've engaged this topic, others have reached out to me to share their experiences, both on the military side as well as the commercial aviation side. On the military aviation side, veterans that have recently got out have shared their stories and have expressed how the objects we were seeing in 2014, 2015 continued all the way to 2019, 2020, and beyond. And so it became a generational issue for naval aviators on the eastern seaboard. This was something we were briefing to new students. This is something that was included in the notice to airmen to ensure that there was no accidents. And now with commercial aviators, they are reaching out because they're having somewhat similar experiences as our military brothers and sisters, but they do not have any reporting system that they can send us to.
And let me just add to, and both to Mr. Fravor as well as Mr. Graves, not having this system for reporting, would you both agree that is harmful to not just our national security interests, but to understand this phenomenon of what's happening with UAPs?
I think it's actually a travesty that we don't have a system to correlate this and actually investigate. So if you took the East Coast, there's coastal radars out there that monitor our air defense identification zone, so out to 200 miles. They can track these, so when you see them, they could actually go and pull that data and get maneuvering. And instead of just having the airplanes, there's other data sources out there. And I've talked to other government officials on this. So you need a centrally located repository that these reports go to. So if you just stuck it in DOD, you wouldn't get anything out of the Intelligence Committee because they have a tendency to not to talk. But if you had a central location where these reports would come in, not just military, but also commercial aviation, because there's a lot of that going on, especially if you talk to anyone that flies from here to Hawaii, over the Pacific, they see odd lights. So I think you need to develop something that allows you a central point to collect the data in order to investigate.
Mr. Graves?
I would concur with everything Mr. Fravor said. I'll continue to say that the commercial pilots that have reached out to me through Americans for Safe Aerospace are doing so because they don't feel there's another way for them to report this safety issue.
And I think one of the clear outcomes of this hearing already is that there has to be a safe and transparent reporting process for pilots, both on the commercial side and the military side, to be able to report UAPs in a way that's also transparent, but also understands the scope of our national security interests and what may be classified or not. But I think there has to be some sort of system. And so that's something that I hope can be an outcome that this committee can work on. Is there anything else for the two of you briefly beyond this reporting system that you think that we can do as a government to encourage and facilitate more civilian reporting?
We're doing it right now.
Okay, great.
I think this hearing is going to show the American people that their government takes this topic seriously.
And how about civilians that may not be pilots? What kind of process could be in place for civilians who are not pilots, who may have UAP encounters? Do either of you have any suggestions that could facilitate that?
My recommendations would be to make that a sensor-centric operation in order to make it as objective as possible.
Okay. Sir, Mr. Fravor?
No, I agree with Mr. Graves on that.
Okay. Just briefly, I also just want to note, particularly for the two pilots, and I have a question for Mr. Grusch. One of the things that I found fascinating in our discussion, Mr. Graves, last night as well, is that you both described UAPs and formations and the way they are observed in space or in our air, and the way that they move is essentially ways in which current technology or aircraft that we know of are unable to actually function or move. And so will you just, for the public record, again, once again, briefly, just either describe or note that aircraft that are being witnessed, particularly by the 30 folks that you're working with, are essentially outside the scope of anything that we know of today and the technology we have today. Mr. Graves, Mr. Fravor?
Yes, the objects that are being seen by commercial pilots are performing maneuvers that are unexplainable due to our current understanding of our technology and our capabilities as a country. And that applies for the military as well.
Mr. Fravor?
Yeah, I concur with that. We have nothing that can stop in midair and go the other direction, nor do we have anything that can, like in our situation, come down from space, hang out for 3 hours, and go back up.
Thank you. My last question, and sometimes I know that you have also said some of these answers in the past, but we're trying to get them on the public record as well, which is really...
I just want to stop here for a second. I found Brooks' post in the chat very interesting, and she said, not that I believe in these men, but I do think it's interesting timing for this hearing. Most Americans live paycheck to paycheck. This is strategic on the government's part, in my opinion. Well, I just want to show you something. I was just actually looking this up. 6 days ago, on the 26th of this hearing, the US, German, and Japanese soldiers were involved in joint task force operations where they were doing exercises together. These exercises are here to important because all of the joint forces, we integrate and we do all our training together, said Sergeant Jorge Bravo, a U.S. Marine with the 31st MEU. They have our own way of doing things. We had our own way of doing things, and we find common ground in the middle, and we're better because of it. So they were involved in joint task force missions over in Australia. I always look at these things and try to figure out, is there any big military moves being, made that day? I was trying to see if there was anything that was going on, maybe in Ukraine that day as well, too. Not that I live in conspiracy, but I always find these hearings to be odd at timings of like military moves and stuff like that. So we'll keep playing through here.
Important. Mr. Grusch, finally, do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had the people with the firsthand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I would just say that I think that these questions are important questions, and I look forward to being involved in the process to get those answered. I know there'll be a lot of questions from other committee members, so I yield back.
Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Burchett himself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. I would like to have you on my legislation to do just that on the reporting, and we'll get together on that. Maybe you can be my co-sponsor on that. That'd be really cool. Thank you for those great questions. Mr. Graves, again, I'd like to know, how do you know that these were not our aircraft?
Some of the behaviors that we saw in a working area, we would see these objects being at 0.0 Mach, that's 0 airspeed, over certain pieces of the ground. So what that means, just like a river, if you throw a bobber in, it's going to float downstream. These objects were staying completely stationary in Category 4 hurricane winds. These same objects would then accelerate to supersonic speeds, 1.1, 1.2 Mach, and they would do so in very erratic and quick behaviors that I don't have an explanation for.
Okay. Have you spoken to commercial and military pilots that have seen these off of our East Coast?
I have.
Okay. Mr. Fravor, I noticed that.
Yeah, Lakota. That's really strange. I was going to say that. Yeah, Rip Paul Rubin. That's just odd. Last night I was doing some Pee Wee Herman impersonations, and the gentleman that plays Pee Wee Herman, Paul Rubin, actually passed away, I think today or late last night. And it's just really sad. I knew he had been sick for a while. I knew that he wasn't in good shape, but I didn't think that it was going to be this close to him passing away. So rest in peace, Paul Rubin. Thanks for pointing that out. He did, Summer. Yeah, he passed away. He had cancer. He was really sick. All right, let's keep playing.
In the Tic Tac video, it's Tic Tac like the candy, not TikTok like the Chinese Communist app.
That's correct.
Yes, sir. I just want to make that because my daughter corrected me on that and called me a boomer and said, "Hey, boomer." And I said, "No, baby, it's Tic Tac like the candy. You're going to have to just look it up." And but now I would also like to say today is a day of many firsts. It's a miracle that we're having this meeting, and it's also a miracle that my wife has put up with me for 9 years today. Today is my anniversary, so I want to tell my wife happy anniversary and that I love her very much. As she likes to say, this 9 years have been the best 2 years of her life. So thank you. Mr. Fravor, what astonished you the most about the flight capabilities of these Tic Tac, very briefly?
The performance, absolute performance. It was.
And you're not aware of any other objects that anybody in the world has in this world that has those capabilities?
No, I think it's far beyond actually our material science that we currently possess.
Are you aware of any other reconnaissance platforms that have tracked or recorded the Tic Tac's maneuvers, maybe the NORAD system or any of the others?
I am not.
Okay. Mr. Grusch, thank you for being here, brother. Thank you all very much. Have you faced any retaliation or reprisals for any of your testimony or anything on these lines?
Yeah, I have to be careful what I say in detail because there is an open whistleblower reprisal investigation on my behalf, and I don't want to compromise that investigation by providing anything that may help provide somebody information. But it was very brutal and very unfortunate, some of the tactics they used to hurt me both professionally and personally, to be quite frank. Yeah.
It's very unfortunate. As they say, when you're over the target, that's when they do the most firing at you. Do you have any personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology?
Yes. Personally.
Have anyone been murdered that you would think that you know of or have heard of, I guess?
I have to be careful asking that question. I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities.
Maybe in a, if we could get in a confidential area, SCIF, we could talk about that. But unfortunately, we were denied access to the SCIF, and that's very unfortunate in this scenario. Mr. Fravor, you believe that you witnessed an additional object under the water in relation to your encounter?
I will say we did not see an object. There was something there to cause the whitewater, and when we turned around, it was gone. So there was something there that obviously moved.
Okay, it was not the same object though that you were looking at, correct?
No, we actually joked that the Tic Tac was communicating with something when we came back, and because the whitewater disappeared.
We were in another instance, we're told about the capabilities of a jamming during viewing of when there were some people chasing some of these objects. Did you experience any of that jamming or interrupting your radar or weapons system?
My crew that launched after we landed experienced significant jamming to the APG-73 radar, which was what we had on board, which is a mechanically scanned, very high-end system prior to the APG-79. And yes, it did pretty much everything you could do: range, velocity, aspect, and then it spit the lock, and the targeting pod is passive. That's what we were able to get the video on.
I'm about to run out of time, but are you aware of any of our enemies that have that capability?
No.
Okay, I would also like to note for the record that like George Knapp breaking Area 51, he's the reason I knew about that. And the reason I know about the Tic Tacs is Leslie Keene from New York Times article, and I would encourage everybody to read that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yield back to you for no time.
Very good. Mr. Raskin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Graves, you reported UAP encounters during training flights, I think, and have since come forward to warn the Pentagon that these encounters may be putting pilots at risk. My first question is, you've identified these as taking place on the East Coast. Is it just on the East Coast where these encounters have been reported?
No, since the events initially occurred, I've learned that the objects have been detected essentially where all operations, Navy operations are being conducted across the world. And that's from the All-Domain Anomaly Resolutions Office reporting.
All right, can you describe your experience after you decided to come forward and go public with your experience?
Certainly. Like many others, in 2017, I saw the New York Times article come out as well. And for me, it was special because I recognized the voices on the video. I recognized the video itself. I had seen it when it was taken. I'd seen it when it was debriefed. And so that was kind of shook me because I realized that this problem was still ongoing. And so I reached out to colleagues back on the East Coast and realized that this was still a safety risk that they were dealing with, that they had essentially hit a wall with how they could move forward on this conversation. It was at that point when I decided to try to move the conversation forward myself.
Are there common characteristics to the UAPs that have been cited by different pilots? And can you describe what the convergence of descriptions is?
Certainly. We were primarily seeing dark gray or black cubes inside of a clear sphere.
I'm sorry, dark gray or black cubes?
Yes, inside of a clear sphere, where the apex or tips of the cube were touching the inside of that sphere. And that was primarily what was being reported when we were able to gain a visual tally of these objects. And that occurred over almost 8 years. And as far as I know, it's still occurring.
So I take it that you're arguing what we need is real transparency in a reporting system so we can get some clarity on what's going on out there, because there are many pilots in your situation, but we should have a way of developing a systematic inventory of all of such encounters. Is that right?
Yes, and I think we need both transparency and the reporting. We have the reporting, but we need to make sure that information can be promulgated to commercial aviation as well as the rest of the populace.
Mr. Grusch, what about you? What was your experience after you came forward?
Well, it's only been about 2 months or so. So I guess my experience has been overwhelming support from former colleagues of mine that have privately messaged me, and I do appreciate that. But I do have knowledge of active planned reprisal activity against myself and other colleagues, and it's very, very upsetting to me.
Coming from where?
Certain senior leadership at previous agencies I was associated with. And that's all I'll say publicly, but I can provide more details in a closed environment.
Okay. Well, I hope you understand that there would be bipartisan rejection of any attempt to vilify, demonize, or engage in other reprisals against our witnesses and people who are.
So Allison says, I saw a UFO when I was 13. Wasn't drinking at the time. Mine was no Tic Tac, though. It was an ongoing joke in my family, but I know I saw. I know what I saw. Thank you so much for the $4.99 super chat. Thank you. Appreciate you. Thanks for sharing that story. I think we all have some stories like that. I think we all have some stories like that. All right, let's keep playing through the hearing. This is very interesting. I'm actually really interested in this, but I want them to get into some stuff. I want to see some videos. I want to see some pictures. I want to see little green men running around.
Or telling the truth from their perspective.
Yeah, there were certain colleagues of mine that were brutally administratively attacked. And it, actually makes me very upset as a leader to see that happen to other coworkers and actually superiors of mine over the last 3 years.
How do you account for that response? That seems like a bizarre response.
I call it administrative terrorism. That's their quiver, their tool in the toolbox to silence people, especially, the career government service cares about their career, cares about their clearance, their reputation to climb the ladder. And when you threaten that career path, a lot of people back off. But I'm here to represent those people. So.
Mr. Fravor, what about you? What has your experience been since you've come forward with your perspective on this?
Actually, I've been treated very well. And the 6 people that were involved, myself included, all of them have or will be retiring from the military as 05s or 06s. And all my friends that are very senior, 3 and 4 stars, I've talked to them. They believe, they understand there's a problem. But no, I was actually treated really well.
And what is your general interpretation of these phenomena?
No
What is
pics.
your current thinking of trying to make sense of them?
Well,
Yeah, again, I didn't get to watch this, so I'm kind of just watching this blind with all of you. Yeah, acacia bush, the burning bush. That's what they think. They discussed it on Joe Rogan's podcast because the acacia bush was found in the desert, and by burning it, it has active ingredients of DMT. And they felt that they were burning this bush as kindling to start fires to cook food. So when you're burning all this bush and that smoke is in the air, you're inhaling DMT. It's pretty crazy stuff. It makes a lot of sense, though.
I'll say, I'm not like a UFO fanatic. It's not me. But I will tell you that what we saw with 4 sets of eyes over a 5-minute period, still, there's nothing. We have nothing close to it. It was amazing to see. I told my buddy I wanted to fly it, but yeah, it's just an incredible technology.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I'll yield back to you.
Thanks. On to Ms. Luna.
Mr. Grusch, in speaking to you yesterday, I just wanted to follow up on Representative Raskin's questions. In the last couple of years, have you had incidences that have caused you to be in fear for your life for addressing these issues?
Yes, personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want everyone to note that he's coming forward in fear of his life to put in perspective, if they were really not scared about this information coming out, why would someone be intimidated like that? To your knowledge, are NHIs working with adversarial foreign governments in either technology exchange programs or back engineering programs?
I don't have data on that. I'm not sure.
Have you heard or you had people come forward to present that evidence?
Not that particular evidence that you just espoused.
Okay, on the 19th of April, Dr. Kirkpatrick, head of Aero, had said that he did not find any evidence of UAPs. You also stated that you had, in your interview, that you had briefed him on information that you were uncovering, but that he did not follow up with you. Were the items that you divulged to him pertinent to national security?
Yes, him and I had a classified conversation in April 2022 before he took over Aero in July 2022, and I provided him some concerns I had.
Do you know why he might not have followed up with you?
Unfortunately, I cannot read his mind. I wish he did. I was happy to give sage counsel to him on where to look when he took the helm of Aero.
Okay, and then my last question for you before I move to Mr. Graves is you received prior approval from the Defense Department to speak on certain issues, correct?
Correct, through DOPSR, DoD Pre-Publication and Security Review. And I just want to remind the public, they're just looking from a security perspective. These are my own personal views and opinions, not the department's.
Okay, I'm asking that though, mainly because I think that there are many people that would like to discredit you. So it does bring a certain amount of credibility to your testimony.
I'm required by law to do that as a former intelligence officer, or I go to jail for revealing classified information.
Yeah, we don't want you to go to jail. My next question would actually be for Mr. Graves. Can you please explain to me in detail the event that occurred at Vandenberg Air Force Base?
Certainly. In the 2003 timeframe, a large group of Boeing contractors were operating near one of the launch facilities at Vandenberg Air Force Base when they observed a very large 100-yard sided red square approach the base from the ocean.
I am muted. Thank you, Harlot. Yeah, I wanted to try something different, do something. It was just nice to pull away from true crime tonight. Obviously it doesn't look like there's a lot of people that are interested in this subject, but I wanted to watch this and I thought it would be nice to watch this together and just try different things out. But we're having fun, we're just hanging out, relaxing. And tomorrow night I'll come back with the Koberger show and there'll be 400 people in here. So that's how it usually works. All right, let's keep playing through here.
And hover at low altitude over one of the launch facilities. This object remained for about 45 seconds or so before darting off over the mountains.
Well, we
There
love
was a
having
similar
you
event
here,
within
sweet
24 hours
and
later in the
sleuth.
evening. This was a morning event, I believe 8:45 in the morning. Later in the evening, post-sunset, there were reports of other sightings on base, including some aggressive behaviors. These objects were approaching some of the security guards at rapid speeds before darting off. And this is information that was received through one of the witnesses that have approached me at Americans for Safe Aerospace.
Was this documented in any official form, whether it was a police blotter?
Yes, they had official documentation and records from the event that the witness held over the years.
And I'm not going to ask you to do it right now for time reasons, but you'd be able to sketch what was witnessed, correct? And have you seen that before on any other equipment and or during your flight time?
I have not seen what they've described. This object was estimated to be almost the size of a football field, and I have not seen anything personally that large.
Okay, and then another question on follow-up referencing the gimbal video Go Fast incident. Can you just clarify, because to our understanding, the footage was actually cut off at a certain point, but what happens at the end of that video, just for those Americans specifically that are wanting to know about the rest of that footage?
Certainly. There was some uncertainty or instability with the object. It seemed to rock a bit, and that's the last I had seen of the video. Much of the data that I would recommend be analyzed would consist of radar data that would provide precise kinematics on the object, as well as the fleet of objects that were operating nearby.
Okay, and follow-up in regards to the reporting procedures that Mr. Garcia had addressed on, as well as Representative Burchett, with the FAA, to your understanding, pilots that are seeing this, commercial airline pilots, are they receiving cease and desist letters from corporations for coming forward with information in regards to safety for potential airline passengers?
I have been made privy to conversations with commercial aviators who have received cease and desist orders.
So the American public should know that corporations are putting their own reputations on the basic, not the line, but ahead of the safety of the American people. And I think, would you agree with that statement?
It appears so.
Okay. And I guess this would be my last, I'm out of time. I yield. I'll be back.
Good. Mr. Moskowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, let's talk about the laws of physics for a second. Mr. Graves and Commander Fravor, I heard you talk about speed. When those objects broke the sound barrier, did they make a sonic boom?
I was in a jet. You can't hear anything. It's kind of loud in there.
Yeah, you're not able to actually personally tell within the vehicle. I will say the objects that we were seeing, they were spherical, and they were observed up to Mach 2, which is a very non-aerodynamic shape.
What about G-forces? Let's talk about G-forces of those vehicles. Could a human survive those G-forces with known technology today?
No.
No, not for the acceleration rates that we observed.
Okay. What about what they look like? How close did you get? Did you see a seam or a rivet or a section? And what I mean is, obviously, the jets you're flying have all those things. Did these objects have those?
Do you want to go ahead?
I didn't have the detail to be able to tell that.
So we got within a half mile of Tic Tac, which people say that's pretty far, but in airplanes, that's actually relatively close. No, it was perfectly white, smooth, no windows. Although when we did take the original FLIR video that is out there, when you put it on a big screen, it actually had two little objects that came out of the bottom of it. But other than that, no windows, no seams, no nothing.
Mr. Grusch, as a result of your previous government work, have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself of non-human origin craft?
Yes, I personally interviewed those individuals.
Mr. Grusch, as a result of your previous government work, have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself about ATs, advanced technologies that the U.S. government has?
Based on conventional advanced tech, I was briefed to the preponderance of the Defense Department's both space and aerospace compartmented programs, yeah.
Do you have knowledge or do you have reason to believe that there are programs in the advanced tech space that are unsanctioned?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say that they're above congressional oversight, what do you mean?
Complicated question. So there's, some, I would call it abuse here. So congressional oversight of conventional special access programs. So I'll use Title 10, so DOD as an example, right? So 10 U.S. Code Section 119 discusses congressional oversight of SAPs, discusses the DepSecDef's ability to waive congressional reporting. However, the Gang of Eight is at least supposed to be notified if a waived or waive bigoted unacknowledged SAP is created, and that's public law.
Well, so that how does, I don't want to cut you off, but
Yeah.
how does a program like that get funded?
I will give you generalities. I can get very specific in a closed session, but misappropriation of funds and
Does that mean
self-fund.
that there is money in the budget that is said to go to a program, but it doesn't, and it goes to something else?
Yes, I have specific knowledge of that. Yep.
Do you think U.S. corporations are overcharging for certain tech they're selling to the U.S. government, and that additional money is going to programs?
Correct, through something called IRAD.
Okay. Satellite imagery. Let's talk about satellite imagery. We have satellites all over the place, some that we're aware of and many that we're not aware of, right? We're taking pictures of everything at every point and second. Mr. Grusch, are you aware, do you have direct knowledge, or have you talked to people with direct knowledge that there are satellite imagery of these events?
That was one of my primary tasks at NGA, since we process, exploit, and disseminate that kind of information. I've seen multiple cases, some of which, to my understanding, and of course, I left NGA in April, so that's my information cutoff date. But I personally reviewed both what we call overhead collection and from other strategic and tactical platforms that I could not even explain prosaically. And I have a degree in physics, by the way, as well. And I am aware that you guys have not seen these reports, unfortunately. And I don't know why.
Do you have direct knowledge, or you had spoken to people with direct knowledge that this imagery applies to crash sites, crash imagery?
I can't discuss that in an open session.
Okay. Do you have any information that the U.S. government is involved in a disinformation campaign to deny the existence of certain UAPs?
I can't go beyond what I've already stated publicly in my News Nation interview because it touches other sensitivities.
Okay. I'll yield the balance of my time back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Fox?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank our witnesses for being here today. Mr. Grusch, in your sworn testimony, you state that the United States government has retrieved supposedly extraterrestrial spacecraft and other UAP-related artifacts. You go so far as to state that the U.S. is in possession of, quote, non-human spacecraft, end quote. and that some of these artifacts have circulated with defense contractors. Several other former military and intelligence officials have come forward with similar allegations, albeit in non-public settings. However, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, the director of AARO, previously testified before Congress that there has been, and I quote, no credible evidence thus far of extraterrestrial activity or of, quote, off-world technology brought to the attention of the office. To your knowledge, is that statement correct?
It's not accurate. I believe Dr. Kirkpatrick mentioned he had about 30 individuals that have come to Arrow thus far. A few of those individuals have also come to Arrow that I also interviewed,
Okay.
and I know what they provided Dr. Kirkpatrick and their team.
Okay,
I was able to evaluate
okay,
that
I
information.
need to go on.
Sure.
But my understanding that his statement is accurate, came from a direct quote. And this contradiction is a perfect example of why we need to inject transparency into our government. And for another example, look no further than the pitiful response to the Chinese spy balloon debacle earlier this year. You may remember the mass confusion that ensued when the balloon was first spotted over Montana, 4 days after it first entered U.S. airspace over Alaska. The Biden administration's initial inability to address the object grew into a continuous series of embarrassments. After news of the balloon reached the mainstream media, we were assured that the balloon posed no threat to our security. However, after the balloon was allowed to transit the entire continental United States, fighter jets were scrambled off the coast of South Carolina to shoot it down. This flip-flopping and obfuscation caused needless confusion, fear, and panic across the country. It's my hope, Mr. Chairman, that this sort of confusion will not be repeated. We should investigate the extent to which elements of our government possess or do not possess information that is of critical value to the American people. We owe it to the citizens of this nation to make sure that our government is transparent and accountable. We must make sure that our government provides answers, and Congress must do its duty to solicit those answers. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Yeah, Mr. Frost.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2022, NASA announced that it was commissioning an independent study team to examine UAPs. The NASA team is comprised of scientists across different fields, as well as former astronauts and pilots. In May, the independent study team held at its first public meeting, which included the perspectives from NASA senior leaders, as well as perspectives from the Department of Defense and intelligence agencies. The NASA study team is also expected to release its first report pretty soon, and I think it's safe to say that we all eagerly await its results. Mr. Graves, how might NASA's research influence the commercial industry regarding safety in UAP?
I think NASA has a big role to play as far as commercial aviation safety, and it's one of their original charges as an organization. One of the recommendations that have been put forward is to utilize their existing aviation safety reporting system to serve as a short-term fill and trusted platform for pilots that want to report on UAP. It also has built-in analytics capability and is funded by Congress.
Gotcha. And also, Mr. Graves, are there any other industries that may be influenced by the NASA research on UAPs? And if so, how so?
Well, I think there is a large swath of commercial capabilities that could be brought to bear on this topic, from space-based or ground-based sensor systems that are available open source.
Honestly, I probably won't ever do a UFO stream again. I thought this was going to be a little bit more interesting, and it's kind of a flop. I mean, obviously, there's not many people watching. They don't really care too much about this. I don't know. It's like another hour left. I don't think I can sit through another hour of this. It's kind of boring. I kind of want to just see AOC talk because I can't stand her, but I thought it'd be funny to see what she says. All right, let's play a little bit more of this. We'll see if we can try to get through it.
Or through commercial marketplaces. And I think NASA's work as they work to identify.
When does this start getting interesting, Diane? Because I'm bored. I'm falling asleep.
And highlight specific parameters that can be found, we can take that information and promulgate this through the public sector so that we can have a more open conversation about what we're seeing.
Forward.
You know, in 2020, the Department of Defense released several videos of UAPs, including Mr. Fravor's experience, U.S. Navy pilots that reported footage. In 2021, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released a preliminary report on UAP events. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson stated that NASA would begin to investigate these events. In fact, I sit on Science, Space, and Technology Committee, and when we were doing a hearing with the NASA Administrator,
Oh no, I get yelled at that for Christine. I get yelled at for talking. I'm not supposed to talk when the video's playing. I'm not supposed to talk. Remember?
And I asked, you know, why NASA needed to be fully funded. And there were many great reasons, but one of them was actually had to do with UAPs. He actually mentioned, you know, is there life out there? I don't know. And so either way, these actions ultimately led NASA to assemble the independent study team that I mentioned earlier. Also in 2021, Harvard University stood up the Galileo project to research and examine the origins of UAP. So it seems like both, you know, from NASA and in the higher education community, because of the work that y'all have done and people standing up, you know, I think we're seeing some of that stigma slowly going away. Mr. Fravor, do you believe that military pilots feeling empowered to share their UAP experiences has directly impacted the scientific community's research goals on this topic?
I would say yes. I would say that
My thumbnail really must have pissed off that guy tonight.
you know, starting in 2017, when it actually came out, it took that stigma away. I mean, I've talked to multiple senators who said prior to that, if you'd have mentioned UAP, you'd have been laughed off the hill. And now we're sitting here today for a public testimony on what's actually going on. You know, I'm hoping that this curve will be more of an exponential and we'll get more and more transparent to the level that we can.
Yeah. And I mean, it's important. I couldn't imagine, you know, I'm not a pilot, but I used to fly gliders in Civil Air Patrol. Yeah.
Pilot?
I mean, you know. And so either way, I mean, I couldn't imagine, you know, being in the glider and seeing something and then not feeling like I had the agency to talk about it. Mr. Graves, can you discuss the importance of seeking scientists to sit on your advisory board?
Absolutely. I think ultimately this is going to be a scientific problem. And not only that, it's also an engineering problem. I've been working with the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics to help them stand up a UAP integration committee to help integrate their engineering prowess into this problem. And so, yes, very much. I think this is an engineering and scientific problem as much as a national security problem.
And how might Congress help to facilitate partnerships between the scientific community and the UAP focus groups within government?
All right, can I fast forward to AOC? Because I just want to see her talk. I want to see what questions she has. I'll let the chat decide. Hit a 1 if you allow me to fast forward to AOC. And then maybe we can get to that point where Diana's talking about the bodies they found. I want to hear that. Throw 1 in the chat if you want me to fast forward. I hate AOC, but I just want to see what her questions are. I know that's probably going to piss off a lot of people in here, but I can't stand her. But I just want to see what she's got to say. She is very nice. She's very easy on the eyes, though. I must say that. All right, let's play AOC. You gave me the
for the
freedom.
congressional record.
You gave me the freedom.
If you reference my News Nation interview and I talk about a multi-decade, campaign to disenfranchise public interest, basically. Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
apologize, Mr. Chairman. I yield back negative 21
Major
seconds.
left wing.
Thank you. Ms.
She's super progressive.
Ocasio-Cortez.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for coming here today. I do concur with the ranking member as well as several other members here on this committee that this is a committee for whistleblowers and for the protection of whistleblowers as well. So we understand what you're putting on the table here and what you're putting on the line here, and we thank you for that. Mr. Grusch, you sat on the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon Task Force created in the 2020 NDAA, correct?
Yes.
There have been some things that have been mentioned here during this hearing that I wanted to pick up on. Mr. Graves, you mentioned specifically during the answers to one of your questions, you named Boeing contractors being engaged in an incident regarding this red cube about a football field wide. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the interaction, or Mr. Grusch, either of you, the interactions between defense contractor companies and any UAP-related programs or activities.
So I'll just say that the information about the contractor himself were provided by a witness, and I have no particular detail in
Understood.
that relationship.
Mr. Grusch?
The kind of general unclass wave tops, certainly the contractors, are the metal benders, so to speak. They're the ones actually doing specific performance on government contracts.
Are they required to issue any disclosure regarding UAP sightings, or do they engage in any reporting around this?
In terms of the contractors,
Yes.
not that I'm aware of.
They do not. Okay. Now, when it comes to notification that you had mentioned about IRAD programs, we have seen defense contractors abuse their contracts before through this committee. I have seen it personally, and I have also seen the notification requirements to Congress abused. I am wondering, one of the loopholes that we see in the law is that there is, at least from my vantage point, is that depending on what we're seeing, is that there are no actual definitions or requirements for notification. What methods of notification did you observe? Like when they say they notified Congress, how did they do that? Do you have insight into that?
For certain IRAD activities, I can only think of ones conventional in nature. Sometimes they flow through certain, I'll just say, SAP programs that have cognizant authority over the Air Force or something. And those are congressionally reported compartments, but IRAD is literally internal to the contractor. So as long as it's money, either profits, private investment, et cetera, they can do whatever they want.
To put a finer point on it, when there is a requirement for any agency or company to notify Congress, do they contact the chairman of a committee? Do they get them on the phone specifically? Is this through an email to hypothetically a dead email box?
A lot of it comes through what they call the PPR, Periodic Program Review Process. If it's a SAP or Controlled Access Program Equity, and then those go to the specific committees, whether it be the SAS, CASC, HISI.
Thank you. I apologize. My time is limited. Mr. Graves, one of your main concerns is that the FAA currently does not have an official process to receive reports of UAP from pilots or others, correct?
Correct.
And in your experience, what data should the Aero program prioritize for potential collection? We have, location, date, time, but are there other specific characteristics that should be included in these reports?
Certainly. I think that there's two categories that would be important. One would be kinematics and understanding the specifics of how the vehicle or objects are moving. And the second would be a more zoomed out approach of being able to look at origin and destination before the incident, as well as getting a better contextual understanding of how these objects are interacting with each other.
Thank you. Now, because I only have a minute left, I apologize, we only have 5 minutes today.
He's fighting cancer. I don't know.
For the record, if you were me,
I
where
forget
would
his
you
name.
look?
What the
Titles,
hell is going on?
programs, departments, regions, if you could just name anything.
What
And
was that
I
on the video?
put that as an open question to the three of you.
Aliens. Oh.
I'd be happy to give you that in a closed environment. I can tell you specifically.
Thank you. Commander Fravor?
I would say, and I've told people that you have to know where to look. They're not going to divulge it to
Fighting
you
cancer
because
right
of
now.
classification levels. But if you know where to look and who to talk to, which is exactly what Mr. Grusch can tell
Yes,
you,
Summer.
then you have them.
Okay. Mr. Graves?
I was an operator, so I was depending on folks like Mr. Grusch to do that homework.
Okay. Thank you very much. I yield back to the chair.
Mr. Biggs?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I thank the witnesses for being here today. I'm over here. Thank you so much for being here.
Christine.
I want to get into specifics here, and the reason I'm going to go this way is because you've talked a bit about what I would call misdirection by official U.S. government with regard to UAPs, right? And so I'm going to get to that in a second. But last week, White House NSC spokesman John Kirby stated that UAPs are having an impact on our training ranges and need to be treated as a legitimate issue. Do you concur with his statements? That's for each of you.
Yes.
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 Okay. Now, having
I'm
said,
going to say probably right about here is when they talked about the bodies, because that's the most replayed. Do you guys want me to speed up to the bodies? I want to hear about the bodies. Type a 1 in the chat if you allow me to speed up so we can hear about the bodies. That's what I want to hear. So we heard AOC. We can hear about the bodies. Oh, we're getting ones. All right, let's hear about the bodies. Let's see if this is the bodies. All right. All right, you win. You win.
I think part of that has been not encouraging reporting. If the problem is not something that can be measured, it's not something that's going to be fixed.
okay, very good. But I'm out of time, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
First of all, without objection, Representative Nick Langworthy of New York has waived down the subcommittee for purpose of questioning witnesses at today's subcommittee hearing. And then we go to Mr. Burleson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you guys coming out today, testifying. Look,
DM
I've
in
been
the
here for
chat
6
room.
months, and I'm pretty skeptical. I don't
DMs
trust
in the
anything
chat
in this
room.
town. And so I think that's because I'm from Missouri. You've got to show me, right? With that being said, there's been
Diane, is this the bodies part? Because you watched it all the way through. Are we at the bodies part? Is it this guy? Let me know.
a lot of things that have been said in the public, Mr. Grusch. And so I want to get down to
Yes,
some
bodies.
specifics, right? So at one point you had said that there has been harmful activity or aggressive activity. Has any of the activity been aggressive, been hostile in your reports?
I know of multiple colleagues of mine that got physically injured. And the activity, and I got
by UAPs or by people within the federal government?
both.
Okay, so there has been activity by alien or non-human technology and or beings that has caused harm to humans.
I can't get into the specifics in an open environment, but at least the activity that I personally witnessed, and I have to be very careful here because they tell you never to acknowledge tradecraft, right? So what I personally witnessed myself and my wife was very disturbing.
Okay. One of my constituents actually sent this next question, and I figured I'd ask it since I had the same thought. You've said that the U.S. has intact spacecraft. You said that the government has alien bodies or alien species. Have you seen the spacecraft?
I have to be careful to describe what I've seen firsthand and not in this environment, but I could answer that question behind closed doors. Yeah.
And have you seen any of the bodies?
That's something I've not witnessed myself.
Okay. And so with that being said, and the other statement that has been made that was intriguing to me it's intriguing because my view has been that we are billions of light years away from any other system. And the concept that an alien species that's technologically advanced enough to travel billions of light years gets here and somehow is incompetent enough to not survive Earth or crashes is something that I find a little bit far-fetched. And with that being said, you have mentioned that there's interdimensional potential. Could you expound on that?
Yeah, to answer your first question, and I'm here as a fact witness and expert, but I will give you a theoretical framework, at least to work off, to kind of espouse crashes, regardless of your level of sentience, right? Planes crash, cars crash, n number of sorties, however high, a small percentage are going to end in mission failure, if you will, as we say in the Air Force. And then in terms of multidimensionality, that kind of thing, the framework that I'm familiar with, for example, is something called the holographic principle. It derives itself from general relativity and quantum mechanics, and that is If you want to imagine a 3D object such as yourself casting a shadow onto a 2D surface, that's the holographic principle. So you can be projected, quasi-projected from higher dimensional space to lower dimensional. It's a scientific trope that you can actually cross, literally, as far as I understand, but there's probably guys with PhDs that we could probably argue about that.
But you have not seen any documentation that that's what's occurring.
Only a
theory.
theoretical framework discussion. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Occam's razor is that these aircraft, have they been identified that they are being produced by domestic, military and contractors? Is there any evidence that that's what's being recovered?
Not to my knowledge, plus the recoveries predate a lot of our advanced programs that I previously am witting of. So,
would it be safe to say that there could be a scenario today where you have an aircraft that crashes and because it's been involved in one program from one federal agency, and the agency that retrieves it is not aware of that program, and to them it appears alien in origin?
I mean, that's a hypothetical situation. I'm not aware of any historical situation that would match that you described. So
You're not aware, it has not happened that you're aware of?
that I'm aware of.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
I can't do this anymore. I'm so bored. I'm falling asleep. The stream was terrible. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I'm done. I'm tapped out. I'm so done with the stream. This was an awful idea. Oh, this was terrible. What a bad idea. Oh, I'm so tapped out on this. I'm literally falling asleep. I'm so bored. Oh, I can't do this. I have to be doing something. I can't just sit here. No, I mean, it was fun, but it's just not. I have to be moving and doing stuff. I'm just so used to doing that on a stream. I'm just sitting here. I'm so bored. Oh God, I actually might go to bed early tonight. I'm so tapped out. Yeah, go to sleep. Oh boy. All right, let me do this. Let's do this. All right, I'll tell you. You want to hear some ghost stories really quick before we end the stream? I'll tell you some ghost stories. Let me know if you want to hear some ghost stories. Type a 1 in the chat if you want to hear some ghost stories. I should have worn my tinfoil hat. I know. Type a 1 in the chat if you want to hear some ghost stories. I'll tell you some quick ghost stories. We'll kind of hang out now. We'll just hang out. All right. I'll tell you a ghost story. So obviously I live in Massachusetts, and some of the specific areas that I live in was around the time of like Paul Revere, when Paul Revere rode, and like the redcoats and all that stuff. So there was a lot of military activity through this area. And my uncle, gosh, this had to have been the early 90s, probably middle 90s, was living in an apartment in Rentham. And Rentham had a lot of, military activity through it, through like the Revolutionary War. So it wasn't confirmed like that this was it, but we think because these areas are just, there's a lot of fighting through here. So anyway, lived in an apartment in Rentham, and my nephew at the time probably was 5 or 6 years old. They moved into this apartment, And I remember going there for like the first time with my dad. And my dad was telling me on the way there that like my uncle Ralph was telling my dad all these stories that the apartment was super fucking haunted, like super haunted. So apparently they had moved in. Maybe a couple weeks had gone by, and the way that their apartment was positioned was, I'm trying to remember it. I think you went up a set of stairs, and then there was a door. And when you walked right in through the door, you could see, like, you would be in the living room, and off to the living room to the side after the front door was their couch. But when you walked in the front door, if you were sitting on the couch, you could look down the hallway and see all the bedrooms. And my uncle said that one night they were sitting there and like watching like old 80s movies or something, and they're on the couch, and he said they literally could see shadows walking back and forth in between the rooms, like creepy shit, right? So there were just other instances of like things missing, and then he would wake up and like it would be like on his chest or beside him on the bed. Like a watch would go missing, and then like a couple of weeks would go by. He's like looking for it, he couldn't find it, and then he would wake up and it would be like next to him, or it would be like on his chest. So the really thing that just blows this out of the water was after a couple of months, my nephew would go running into my uncle's room, like crying and saying things like, "Daddy, Daddy, there's someone in my room. There's someone in my room." So they're like, "Yeah, whatever." So we would like go to the room, check it out. He's like, "There's nothing here. You're okay." And this like went on for like weeks. And finally, the last time was my nephew Matty ran into the bedroom crying again. He's like, I don't want to sleep in that room anymore. There's a little boy in the room that is pulling my eyes open, telling me to play with them." And that was it. They moved out. That was it after that. Goodbye. They moved out. So yeah, just some crazy stories like that. I had a friend, Steve. His parents lived in a very, very, very old house in North Attleboro and Massachusetts, North Attleboro, Massachusetts. And apparently, from what I heard, it used to be an old general store before it actually got converted into a house. That was kind of the rumor. And so like I had just met them, in the neighborhood, and he's like, "Oh, do you want to come stay over like my house?" It's what 12 and 13-year-old kids do. So I ended up staying over there for the first night, and he started telling me it was like, "Oh, we have ghosts in the house." Yeah, right. So he's like, "No, we have ghosts." And he's like, at night when it gets very, very quiet, you'll hear them walking up the stairs, like walking up and down the stairs. Yeah, bullshit. So like it gets super quiet at the house at night. It's like 11 o'clock at night, and all of a sudden you can start hearing it like walking up the stairs. And we were in the house, in certain parts of the house where we would be in like a back room, and literally like a curio cabinet would just come falling down with no one else in the house. It would just flip over. So it was like lots of weird shit like that, like weird incidences like that going on in the house. I also had a friend back when I lived in Hyde Park, Massachusetts. His house was super haunted. Like I'm saying, like poltergeist shit. Like the house, like the fucking cabinets would rattle. There would be screaming inside of the house. And like I know somewhere I have an audio cassette of it because we recorded it one time. I have to find it. But literally like lights would flicker, just super, super paranormal activity going on in the house. And I remember like it, and everybody knew of the house in the neighborhood. It was fucking crazy. It was like literally a house out of Poltergeist. And I remember like they would get what they would call like attacks in the house where everything would just start going crazy. They would have to like go outside the house and stand and wait until everything like calmed down. It's like weird, crazy shit. And I know I have an audio recording of it somewhere because we took a tape recorder in there and recorded it. Christine Brown's asking a question. She says, "Do you have any experiences of your own? I've heard stuff from people that actually believe they were saying. They definitely believed what they were saying. Okay, so I'll tell you an incident, and it actually involves my best friend that was murdered. So if you know my story, my friend Tony in 1994 was murdered, and that's him right there. So if you haven't heard my story, I will tell you. It's really odd. This was, oh God, maybe 2003, 2004. Totally unrelated area that I lived in. I was living with my mom still young. I was in my 20s. And I came into I came into the apartment, and I came in my bedroom, and I sat down, and for some reason I started to think about my friend Tony. And I had this thought in my head, was just like, oh, I wonder if he's okay. And then literally, and I'm actually getting goosebumps now. I wish you could see them. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about this. Literally at that very moment, I literally have goosebumps right now. I don't know if you probably can't see them, but I'm goosebumping up. Literally at that moment, I had this overwhelming feeling of being calm. And I know this sounds weird and creepy, but if you've spent any time in someone's house, and you probably all can vouch for this, you tend to know what things smell like, or an environment smells like, or if you're around someone, you know what they smell like. Not in a weird, like not in a weird way. I think you know what I mean. It was crazy. I had this over sense of like calm come into the room. I literally felt my my body get like kind of warm, and I had this feeling. I smelt him come into the room, and I had this feeling that said, I'm okay. Like everything is good. And I literally just smiled, and I sat on the side of my bed and kind of went with the moment for a little bit, and then it went away. So that was really strange. After my brother passed away, this was really weird. After my brother passed away, I lived in an apartment, or I lived in a house. It was a house that was split into an apartment. So I had one side, and a single guy was on the other side. And the way my house or apartment was, you would walk into the door, and it was a small mud room, and then you walked up a very small set of stairs before you actually went into the apartment. But if you turned around and you looked out there, I'm getting goosebumps right now too, talking about this. I had a front door that had these 3 small window slits like this at the top of it to let light into the, through the door. My brother passed away, and it was like a couple of days later. It was very early in the morning. I came out, and I looked out of that glass, that little window through that door, and I saw my brother standing there. And I'm literally getting goosebumps right now. I have major goosebumps right now. Another really odd thing, that actually 2 other weird things about my brother. Actually 3. I'll give you 3 weird things. So I think it was a couple nights after he had passed away, I saw that, and then I laid down one night, and I was falling asleep, and my brother came to me and said something about like, not my bed. And he like woke me up. I heard his voice, and he said, not my bed. And I don't know what that meant, but maybe he was just giving me a signal that, he was there. Here's even the strangest, actually here's even 2 more weirder things. So after the funeral, when we went up to bury him, and they were lowering the casket, there were roses there. And I took some of those roses. I still have them to this day. And I brought them back, and I was living in that same apartment that I was just talking about. And one night, I had left them out I had a mantle in my living room, and I left that up on the mantle to have them dry out. And they were standing like straight up. And actually, hang on, I'll show you. So this is my brother that passed away right here. That's my sister and my father. So I made this, it's kind of falling apart now, but I made this in memory of my brother. So I had this up on my mantle like this, and I had the roses leaning up against it, and they were drying out. So they're up against the mantle. One night I'm literally sitting watching TV. Oh, I have some good ghost stories. I'm sitting watching TV, and the roses literally go flying off the mantle and just fall on the floor. And like, I have goosebumps talking about this. And it's like, how did that happen? It's just really weird and odd. Here's another weird thing. So when I went to go visit him after the funeral and went back to the cemetery for the first time, like a couple of months later, and I was with the girl I was dating at the time. We get there, and he's buried up kind of on a hill, just around near the wood line of the cemetery, and he's next to a tree. So we get there, and we're standing there, and all of a sudden we hear church bells go off in the background, and this hawk comes flying in and literally lands just above on the tree line and sits there and looks at both of us. And I'm like, that's my brother Kenny. That is what he would do. He would do something like that. It was just really crazy. All right, another ghost story. So a couple of years ago, I'm at my friend Brian's house, and my friend Brian like ran out to the store or something like that. And I was talking to his wife, Chelsea, and we're sitting there and we're talking about, she was getting ready to go see one of those mediums, and she's like, oh, you should go, it's really good, and she's really good. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. And I don't know, there's just a lot of stuff that I think that would come up if I ever went to someone like that. And literally all of a sudden in the kitchen, there's no one in the kitchen, there's no way possible, there's no one in the kitchen. She had wine glasses up on like one of those like shelves that you can drill into the wall. I don't know. There was some commemorative like wine glasses, like maybe for like an anniversary or something like that. And we're talking about mediums and ghosts and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, one of those literally go flying off the shelf and smash up against the wall. And her and I go, what the fuck? Like, it's just weird stuff. Really, really weird stuff. What else do I have? I don't know. I think that's really it. I mean, I've worked up in a outlet mall before where we believe that there was a lot of Revolutionary War activity around, and I've seen things out and around there. And I have a lot of weird stories. People that I worked with. I could go on and on forever. So I don't know. What else? What else? I had a lot of people that I worked with that died. That's kind of weird. And I had people that I worked at this one place, and two people that I worked with at that place died. That was really crazy. I mean, what's the coincidence of that? How does that happen? One kid was shot and killed defending one of his friends. He literally got shot in the heart. Some kid pulled a gun out and shot him. And the other girl that I worked with, she got into a major car accident head on. Someone hit her head on in a snowstorm. It was like really weird. I went through this very weird period of like everywhere that I worked after I left, like just immediately after I left, someone died. That was really weird. And thankfully that has not happened in a long time, but that was odd. That was really weird. There's a lot of places in and around me that have a lot of paranormal activity. There's actually a Unsolved Mysteries many, many years ago did an unsolved mystery about a specific area around where I live. It's a glowing gravestone that we used to go and see, and you can see it. It glows. It's crazy. What'd you say? Your friends call you what? My friends call me Death Jewel with a morbid button. So I don't know. I have a lot of weird stuff. There's a lot of weird stuff that's happened. But I don't know. Maybe this will end tonight's live. It's almost 2 hours. Wow, almost 2 hours went by. Oof. So I don't know. Maybe we'll do a stream sometime where I can open up I'll drop the link and have people come on and tell us their ghost stories. Ooh, I don't even want to go to bed now. I'm all creeped out. I don't like talking about that stuff late at night. It's creepy. Yeah, it's really weird. I've worked at places where people literally like have died. Like I'll leave, I'll go work another place, they die. Leave some, and it's not like it's a lot of violent stuff that has happened to people, which is really strange. Kind of makes you feel weird. You're like, did my spirit or something have something to do with that? So it's weird, but I don't know. I think that's going to end tonight's stream. Before you all go, let me do this. Tomorrow night, I'm going to come back with a Koberger. We're going to talk a little Koberger tomorrow. And then I'm going to tell you, August 2nd is a big day. You have another Koberger court hearing, and then Long Island serial killer Rex Heuermann, or accused Long Island serial killer Rex Heuermann, will be in court on the 2nd as well. So I'm sure we'll get some video from that. I'm going to do a show on the 2nd about Heuermann. So that is the link for tomorrow night's show. Yeah, it was just something different to do. Just hang out a little bit. So tomorrow night we'll come back. We'll do some Koberger. I know that the lawyer you know just dropped a new video on Koberger, so I want to come back and go through that with all of you guys. I'm still working on trying to get him. Peter Tragos, you don't answer me. It's funny. I can talk to Jennifer now. Like I'll just tweet at her or just message her through Twitter. She answers me right away. It's great. I had a lot of questions the other day before I went live and asked her a bunch of stuff. So she was really sweet. She answers my questions, which is nice. And, I plan to have her back, maybe once this Long Island serial killer stuff kicks up, and just get her thoughts on that. I'd love to have her come back as a guest on the show and get her perspective on that. And of course, when Koberger starts heating up again, I'll have her come back for that too. But I am working on trying to get some other bigger guests here on the show. It's very tough because sometimes they just don't want to do it. They don't see the value in a small channel, but we'll see. I've reached out to JLR. I'd love to get him. I'd love to get Peter, but don't think I'm going to be able to get those people. So I have a few more people that I'm going to reach out to, just shoot some fish in the barrel and see what happens. It's kind of what I did with Jennifer Coffindaffer, and it ended up working out. So, all right, I'm going to get some sleep. Everybody be good. Thank you for modding. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the subscribers. Oh, we need to look at a subscriber count. Let's update the board. Hang on before we go. We are at 8243. I need some more of my videos to take off. I will tell you this though. I'm probably going to cut down on streaming every night because I want to concentrate on short form content and release videos as well as live stream, because the short form content literally just gained me like 300 subscribers in like less than 24 hours. So that Papa Roger video I did like blew up. So I want to get to 10,000 subscribers. So I might peel back on live streaming every night and do some short form content. But if I do, and you see those videos pop up, please interact on them. That's the best thing to do. All right. We're at $1:45. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. We had some laughs. We had some weird stuff that happened in the beginning of the stream. That was weird. And then that weird interruption during the the hearing was weird too. And then we told some ghost stories to round it out. All right. I'm going to get going. Everybody good, be good. Everybody be safe. I'll see you back live tomorrow night, 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll come back with some koboga tomorrow. Good night. Bye.